Clara Rollins was not meant to survive that storm. The snow fell like a white curtain, swallowing the world whole. She had been riding for hours through the Wyoming mountains, her coat soaked, her fingers numb, her body ready to surrender. When her horse collapsed into the snow, Clara knew it was over. She was going to die alone. But fate had other plans. A man found her. A stranger. A rough, silent cowboy with ice-blue eyes and a cabin hidden deep in the mountains. His name was Eli Carver. And from the moment she opened her eyes to see him standing over her, everything changed. Only a week before, she had been burying her husband with her own hands. The wind cut like a knife as she covered James Rollins, grave with a thin layer of frozen dirt. He had died for a piece of land he believed in. Shot down by the men of Silas Croft, the richest rancher in Sage Hollow, the man who claimed everything he wanted with money and fear. James had stood up to him. He had been brave. And it got him killed. Clara was 24 and already a widow. After the funeral, the town turned its back on her. They whispered behind her back, blaming James for fighting Croft. Some said she was cursed. Others just pitied her. But no one stood by her. The bank gave her 1 week to pay the loan or lose the land. The land she and James had dreamed of building a life on. She tried to sell everything. Tools, furniture, even the rocking chair James had made for her. But no one wanted anything from the Rollins homestead. They didn't want her sorrow or the trouble that came with it. She walked to Sage Hollow day after day, asking for work, but every door closed in her face. Even the hotel turned her away when she asked to cook. The owner only smiled and told her there were other ways a woman like her could make money. She left before her anger betrayed her. On the last day of her hope, Silas Croft found her standing in the street as the sun began to set. He was older, with a round belly and sharp eyes. He looked at her the way a wolf looks at a wounded deer. He offered her food, a bed, and protection. But she knew his price. Her pride, her freedom, her body. "I am not for sale," she told him. His smile faded, his voice turned cold. "You'll think different when you're starving." That night, Clara packed what little she had left, a blanket, a tin cup, dried beans, and her husband's revolver. She saddled her horse and rode toward the mountains. She didn't know where she was going, only that she could not stay. If the world of men had rejected her, then she'd live alone. Or die trying. The storm hit the next day. Snow fell harder than she had ever seen. The wind howled like a wild animal. Her horse stumbled. Clara fell. The world turned white and silent. When she opened her eyes, she was lying near a fireplace, covered in furs. A pot of meat boiled over the fire. The rough walls of a log cabin surrounded her. She could barely move, but the warmth and hunger pulled her back to life. He sat in a chair nearby, sharpening a knife. A tall man with dark, unkempt hair and a heavy beard. His clothes were patched and worn, his shoulders broad, his eyes cold and steady. He didn't smile. He didn't ask if she was all right. "Drink," he said, handing her a bowl of steaming broth. She drank. The taste was rich and hot, like life coming back into her bones. "Where am I?" she whispered. "My cabin," he answered. "What's your name?" "Eli," he said simply. Then he turned back to the fire. He had pulled her from death, but he was not kind, not gentle. He was stone, quiet and dangerous. And she was stuck with him until the storm passed. Clara didn't know if she had escaped death or walked straight into it. And as the wind howled against the walls and the fire crackled low, she realized she had nowhere else to go. The storm did not let up. Day after day, the snow fell. The wind screamed through the trees, like something alive. The mountains were buried, and with them, Clara was shut inside the cabin with Eli Carver, a man who spoke in 3-word sentences and disappeared into the cold every morning without a goodbye. She watched him, the way he worked the fire before dawn, The way he slid silently between the trees after strapping on snowshoes and a rifle. He was not a man who feared the storm. The storm respected him. He survived because he had learned to become just as quiet, just as fierce, and just as unforgiving. Clara tried to repay him in small ways. She cleaned what she could, cooked what little he brought in from hunting. She melted snow for drinking water and stitched torn fabric with her shaky hands. He never asked her to help. He never commented when she did. But she noticed how he always ate the food she prepared, scraping the bowl clean before setting it quietly by the fire. Their silence was heavy, but no longer uncomfortable. It was a fragile peace. Once, when he was gone, she found his journal, hidden on a small shelf above his bed. She hesitated, then opened it. What she saw sent a chill through her that no winter could match. Names, written in bold, jagged ink. Henry Sloan, Marcus Thorne, the Miller brothers. All of them crossed out. On the next page, a map. A street with X's drawn on buildings, positions, angles, a plan. On another page, words like scars carved into flesh, the price of a man's soul. Redemption is just forgetting. No God listens here. Clara understood then. Eli Carver was no simple trapper. He was a man who had ended lives. A man who kept a ledger of death. A man hiding from something black and heavy. That night, as they sat in silence by the fire, she felt his eyes on her, watching her, waiting. He knew she had seen something she shouldn't have. But she was alive because of him. She owed him more than fear. When he cut his hand splitting wood the next day, she didn't hesitate. She ran to him with cloth and water, ignoring the way he jerked back when she touched him. She cleaned and wrapped his hand with the same care a wife gives her dying husband. She felt his breath catch when her fingers brushed his. Then it happened. Their eyes met and held. There was something in his look that frightened her more than the storm. A pain. A loneliness so deep it felt like a hole in the world. A quiet cry for something he no longer believed he deserved. He turned away without a word. That night the wolves came. It began with a distant howl, rising and falling on the wind. Then another, closer. Clara froze by the fire, her heart pounding wildly. She had heard stories of wolves dragging men from their tents. She imagined their glowing eyes, their teeth tearing through the thin wooden walls. Eli didn't move. He sat by the fire, cleaning his pistol, his face calm. The howl came again. This time, just outside the door. Clara's breath shook. Her eyes darted toward her small pallet in the shadows. A thin blanket. A dying fire. A storm. Wolves. That pallet suddenly seemed like the loneliest, most terrifying place in the world. She stood up. Slowly. She walked toward Eli, her body trembling, not caring how it looked. Not caring if she was breaking some unwritten rule. She stopped beside him, and without asking, she slid into his bedroll. Eli froze, all muscle and tension. He didn't turn, didn't speak. He was stone again. But she felt the heat coming from his skin. She felt the solid wall of his body beside her, and she pressed her head against his shoulder, her voice breaking as fear overtook her. "Don't go," she whispered. "Don't stop. I need this." Quote. Nothing happened for a long time. Just the storm, the fire, her racing heartbeat. Then, slowly, like a fault line cracking open beneath the earth, his hand moved. He reached behind him and pulled her close, holding her like she was the only warm thing left in a frozen world. He held her until dawn, his body a shield against the storm. And the next morning he left before light, as he always did. But this time, when the door shut behind him, Clara realized the cabin no longer felt cold or empty. Something had changed. Not the weather, not the walls, them. A dangerous, unspoken tension now lived between them, a pull they could both feel and neither dared to name. And soon, the storm outside would not be the only storm they faced. The snow had barely stopped falling when danger returned to the mountains. Not from the sky, but from men. Clara first sensed it when Eli's dog, Blue, growled low, hackles raised, staring into the trees. An hour later, an old trapper named Jebediah stumbled into their clearing, his face sharp with curiosity and something darker. He looked at Clara with too much interest, and at Eli with too much recognition. "You're a long way up here for just a hunter," he muttered, eyes narrowed. Eli said nothing, just stared back, stiff as iron. Clara watched the silence between them, knowing it was not harmless. Later that night, after the trapper left, Clara found Eli outside alone, staring into the trees. His face was hard and locked like a door slammed shut. She laid a hand gently on his arm. "What aren't you telling me?" she asked. He didn't answer at first. Then he exhaled, long and slow. "I'm wanted," he finally said, his voice rough with shame. "They call me Black Carver." Clara's breath caught. Black Carver, a name whispered in saloons. A name hunted on wanted posters. A name feared. But Eli wasn't a monster. Clara had seen his soul, and she knew the world had twisted him into that name. He wasn't hiding from justice. He was hiding from a life he had stopped believing he deserved. "They'll come," he said. "One day. Men like them always do." He wasn't wrong. Spring came slowly. The thaw revealed the creek again, and the world breathed new air. Clara felt hope stirring, but it didn't last. One morning, just after the snow melted, Daisy, her horse, returned to the cabin alone. Mud on her reins, fear in her eyes. Clara was gone. Eli didn't hesitate. He was no longer the silent, broken man in the shadows. He became fire. He became fury. He became Black Carver. He tracked her without rest. Through rocky ravines and dark pines, past dropped bullet casings and trampled grass, he finally found the men, the same ones who had killed James, and they had Clara tied to a tree. Silas Croft had sent them. He wanted Clara gone for good. There was no warning, no shout. Eli's rifle spoke first. The fight was fast and brutal. The scarred man took a bullet to the spine. The second man fell with a shot to the chest. A third dropped screaming as Eli's fist smashed into his jaw. Clara watched, bound and bruised, as Eli fought like the devil himself, fueled by fear and something greater, love. Only one man remained alive, the one wounded by Clara's gun. Eli dragged him close, his voice a growl. "You go back to Croft. You tell him if he ever comes near her again, I'll burn the earth under his feet. You tell him Black Carver is done running." The man ran, and as he disappeared into the trees, Clara stumbled to Eli, hands shaking as she untied herself. She grabbed Eli's face. His eyes were hard as flint. But underneath, she saw the pain. And then she saw blood. He swayed on his feet, eyes hollowing. The stray shot had gone deep. He collapsed into her arms. Clara's scream echoed through the valley. She somehow got him onto his horse, somehow led both horses back up the mountain, somehow stayed awake through the fear and exhaustion, whispering to him the entire way. "You don't get to leave me like this, Eli. Please, don't stop. I need you." She nursed him back from the edge of death. She held him through fever and nightmares. She stayed by his side, whispering to him, fighting for him like he had fought for her. And when his eyes finally opened days later, she was there, crying, smiling, alive. It was the first time she saw Eli Carver break. He wept, silent, shuddering tears of a man who had finally found something worth living for, something he thought he never could. Her. They did not run anymore. They rode down to Sage Hollow and walked into the sheriff's office together, Clara with her head held high. Eli, coat torn, arm in a sling, gun belt in his hand. He put his pistol on the table and told his story, the real one. He confessed to protecting his brother and being framed by the men who hired him. He told them he was ready to face justice because it was the only way he could stand beside Clara in the open light. The town was shaken, but as people learned the truth, The real truth. Something shifted. The blacksmith came forward, then the mercantile owner, then a farmer, then another. One by one, decent men, the kind always crushed beneath men like Croft, stood beside Eli and Clara. They were done being silent. The town rallied for them, and Silas Croft's power broke. There was a final gunfight at dusk, right in the center of town. Crofts hired killers against the townsfolk. Eli fought not as a gunslinger for hire, but as a protector. He took a bullet to the shoulder, shielding Clara. She fired back, saving him. Father and daughter, husband and wife. Something new, a team. Croft fled in disgrace, and the town did not welcome him back. Months later, Clara and Eli rebuilt that broken cabin in the mountains. Together. The chimney stood tall again. The door was stronger. The fire burned brighter than ever before. And the silence inside their walls was a peaceful one. Not empty, not fearful, alive and warm. They found home, not in a place, but in each other. And on winter nights, long after the gunshots faded and the snow settled, Clara would sit by the fire, with Eli's hand in hers. She would lean in, close, and softly whisper, "Don't go, I need you." And he always stayed. Because love, real love, isn't something you run from. It's something you fight for.